I almost never do interviews.
Really? Why not?
I almost never do interviews.
Almost?
I virtually don't do them. Go ahead.
Let's start.
Here it goes.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I'm Egor Shalvarov.
Here goes. I'm just warning you. Okay, go ahead. I can be a really tough interview.
Into my line, just
Okay,
like
go ahead.
that.
Okay, go ahead.
Are you allowing me?
Yes, I am.
2017 South Open Dancesport Championships with Mr. Diva himself. Mr. Rufus Dustin, the champion of the champions.
Maker of champions now.
Let's skip the American rhythm part.
Okay.
So let's talk about drag. How do you foresee drag in dance sport?
I haven't really... I don't know what the current wave is, so
No.
I'm sorry I can't help you with that.
Oh, that
Sorry,
sucks.
that
So
right
in
now.
that case, I'm going to have to move back to the
the
American
rhythm.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's talk about rhythm.
All right.
I don't think a lot of people know how it all started from the very beginning. As a division.
Okay, so there's nothing left in ballroom dancing today that is authentic. There's nothing. As soon as we additionalized competitive dancing, anything authentic exited. The basis of the American rhythm may have started in some sense of authenticity.
In some senses.
In some senses, somewhere around 1937. At that time, everything that was coming out of the Caribbean was called rumba, R-H-U-M-B-A. Mm-hmm. And it didn't matter what it was. It was just all called rumba. And then there were, there were adaptations, pachanga this and son versus guaracha rumba. There were all these attachments. Its essential origin comes from Afro-Cuban rhythms, specifically from Cuba. And I say Afro-Cuban rhythms because we have to remember that African slaves brought to Cuba by Spain were released from bondage almost 100 years before American slaves were released from bondage. So the instrumentation that they used as Africans from Africa brought to Spanish symphonic and melodic music used in social noble classes. You combine those two efforts.
That was the together. That's
exactly.
What got it.
In the States, that translated actually to jazz. So our black African slaves that were released from bondage started playing European rhythms, European timings, combined with their African percussion instruments, and that turned into jazz.
Interesting. And then subsequently ended up on the dance sport floor, we could say. Was it dance sports right away, or
No.
eventually
No,
it evolved into that?
So
Going into now, moving into the now era.
So originally, the American style was a 4-dance competition. Before it was called dance sport, it was called ballroom dancing.
Yes.
In 1974, I won the United States Dancesport Championship in American style, which was a combined event at that time. And you had to do foxtrot as your first dance. Then you did the swing. Then you did the bolero, and then you did a mambo. Normally, anyone who actually won the foxtrot usually won the 4 dances completely. Foxtrot contains extreme discipline about one essential thing: partnering.
Yes.
So really, if you had the basis of what you could do in a 3-step and a feather step, you combined the classic version of good ballroom dancing with your other 3 dances, which were rhythm dances.
Yes.
And
Now,
we never called it American rhythm. At that time, it's just called American style ballroom.
In terms of basis for the foxtrot, did it have the dominance of closed position, or it was just open?
It was dominant for closed position.
I see.
At that time,
Yes.
we were all studying with international style, which we used to call English style at that time, ballroom dancing. So we were taking lessons from ballroom coaches from England and the assortment of Englishmen that had already immigrated to the United States permanently. One of our first big immigrations were originally the English who came, especially to the East Coast. That first class of immigrants to ballroom dancing We're not, we're not the Irish, and it wasn't the Germans, and it wasn't the Austrians, and it wasn't the Russians. It was actually England.
That's right. They have definitely influenced strongly to the point that United States now, we're talking about right now, holds both styles. It's sort of eventually branched out into American Smooth and then International Ballroom.
Beautifully so. So when we're looking at the American Smooth category, one can argue this point, but in my opinion, it is the most beautiful, most inventive, continually evolving style that we have in ballroom dancing today.
Let me ask you about your personal pet peeves of the American style and drop them like they're hot.
Okay. We have to stop arguing about leg action.
How do we do that?
American style is based on different tempos of dances that cross-register with international style. So there's not too much that we can terribly do to a cha-cha that hasn't been done to a cha-cha over a 100-year period. Key essential is the tempi. The tempo changes the development of the skill set of the legs because one has more time to develop the center of the body with a slower tempo.
For us, fill up the rhythm.
Yeah, you can fill up the rhythm. Slower. So if you fill up the rhythm, you can do a much more delayed leg action because delayed leg action creates a more delayed action in the center base, and a straight leg action at a higher tempo makes you throw the hip. Identifiably, they are different. Steps aren't necessarily different. A group of us are trying to eliminate is the cha-cha lock in American style. It doesn't really exist within the bronze curriculum as stated by most of the organizations on the National Dance Council. The lockstep is omnipresent, but the lockstep isn't really necessary. Most of the time, passing the feet slightly, which gives a more authentic look to the cha-cha-cha. Small forward walks and small back walks. And chassé, which is the basis behind the cha-cha-cha. And 2 rocks, 1 backwards and 1 forward, and a syncopation usually on 4 and 1 and 2 and 3. So in the cha-cha, if someone walks into the room and you see American-style cha-cha from international, the one thing that you will see that is different, that there's much more attachment to this center skill.
Yes.
About rotation, a nani-go motion, which is forward and back of the hips, and also tick-tock like a clock. So those 3 elements are used. In international style, because of the tempi, the tempo is so quick that I think some of the regard for that center drops, and it becomes a leg and foot issue about showing beautiful balletic style leg action. Yeah. If you're a little bit knowledgeable, you would see the difference. On the other hand, if you're not knowledgeable, you walked into the American style final, professional now, it would be very hard to discern that that's the American style cha-cha. But I don't have a problem with that because cha-cha has been explored as so fully by both styles for so long.
Very true.
That American style is the most democratic of the styles. It says you can basically do anything you bloody want. It doesn't have restrictions like international does. International has very specific restrictions. I will tell you that the American rhythm can be done by a dancer for a longer period of time because the leg action is a softer action. We're finding that the international style young dancers are beginning to get tissue damage on the bottom of the feet because they laying down at that leg at that speed over and over again, particularly for lady dancers in a 3.5-inch heel, can be very damaging. Trying to start doing that at 7 and 8 and 9 years old.
Yes.
And then by the time you're 17, 18, we're beginning to see knee and hip dysplasia, problems with 4th, 5th, and 6th lower back, and we finding that our Latin dancers are more often becoming more interested in having a longer career, besides the fact that social dance, social American style, is the heart of the business. People coming in for their first time are not taught international style. They're taught American style social.
I love the fact that we moved slowly from pet peeves of yours into how great it is to do American rhythm. That's
great. And then the other thing is the 2 dances that do really determine American style rhythm being vastly different from international style are the beautiful bolero and of course the mambo. Swing has been dropped to 34 measures per minute, so now we're going to see a West Coast swing start to enter into what was
more.
formerly called East Coast swing. So that it will have a detachment away from jive.